All right, so good day, everyone. We are welcome to the online session for our Python program. Please, let's mute our mics, please. Please, let's mute our mics. Just tap on the mic icon on your screen to mute, please. Let's all mute. Please, Mr. Dari, just mute. Okay. All right. So once again, good day. We are welcome to the online meetup, right, for our Python program, right. So before we get started with what we did today in the physical class, I want to be sure that we can actually hear me and also see my screen, right? So if you can hear me clearly and if you can also see my screen, please, you can now unmute and let me know so I can know to, yeah, so just to double check before we start, right? So if you can hear me clearly, please just unmute. That mic icon on your screen, just tap on it to unmute.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, loud and clear, ba? And
Yes.
I'm actually
Yes, sir.
inside my VS Code right now. Can you also see my screen, please?
Yes, I can see your screen,
All
sir.
right,
Yes.
so I'm recording right about now, so I think we are good to go. All right, so you can mute. All right, so today in the physical class, we started with the exercise we had last week. Then we went ahead um, to talk about collection types basically, right? So I'm not going to start with the exercise, right? Because I'm going to paste the link to the solution of the exercise in the group, right? So we are just going to start with collection types in the online meetup for today, right? So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, you know, the usual thing. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call it collection types. Then you know, just import it, you know, whichever way you know how to. If it is to click on file at the top of your screen, then okay, let me zoom out of this a bit. Yeah, so if it is to click on file, open folder, then, you know, look for, you know, whichever file you want to import, right? Either that or you can just drag your folder into your VS Code. So whichever one you prefer, just open your folder in the VS Code. Then because we need the file to work with, so you can hover, then click on new file, then create a file for this. So I'm going to create a file and call it main.py. So this is the file we are going to be using for this particular session. And yeah, so one more thing I missed out on, right? So because, you know, so many things can go wrong in the online session, right? So many things like say maybe network, I think not so many things, right? You think it's just network. So if, you know, network fluctuates, sometimes I could tail off, you could stop hearing me, or you could stop seeing my screen. So many things can happen as a result of, you know, poor network. Then also, if you notice that maybe you stopped, maybe I just left the session, please do not leave. Just wait for me patiently in the session. I'm going to try my possible best to get back in, right? I'll fix whatever issues would have caused it, then try as much as possible to get back in. So this is just like a disclaimer. Please just remain in the group irrespective of what happens, right? Because for today we are going to be having like I want to be like maybe 2 sessions. I'm only allowed to create 1 hour rather. So we'll go from now through 4 p.m. Then the session would end. I'll paste a new link in the group for another 1 hour. Then I think that second 1 hour will be enough to cover everything we did in class. So basically, we are going to be doing or having two sessions for today, 1 hour each. Right. So if you notice that you stopped hearing me and you stopped seeing my screen, please, you can unmute and let me know. right? So that is basically how it's going to be. I was expecting a larger number in the online session today, but then I'm just seeing like 5 persons or so. So it means everybody is like a moderator. So if you notice you stopped hearing me or you stopped seeing my screen, just unmute and let me know. Are we still together, please? Whenever I say are we still together, you can always unmute and just let me know, so I'll know I've not been cut off. All right, thank you. All right, so as I was saying, we treated a collection type today, so that is basically where we are going to be starting from. Yeah, so I've imported my folder, then I created a file main.py in here. Now, to start with, we said collection types. Remember, we started with data types a few, like a week and a half. Data types, variables, and stuff like that, right? Then we said there is also a particular concept called collection type. So we said collection type are just like a data type that can hold multiple values in one variable, right? So that is just the difference between your regular, say maybe strings, floats, boolean, and the likes to your collection type. Collection type is just a data type that can hold multiple values. So we said we have 4 collection types. So I think I'm going to comment this and say collection types, or maybe let me zoom in one more layer. Yeah, so collection types, we have 4 of them. We have list, we have tuple, we have dictionary, then we have set. So these are the 4 collection types we have. So we are going to take it in this order: list, tuple, dictionary, and set. So we said the symbol for list is this square bracket, then the symbol for tuple is this circular bracket, then the symbol for dictionary is this curly braces, then also the symbol for set is this curly braces. But then we said the difference between the dictionaries and the set is in the content that you pass in here. So we are going to get to see how these two are being used later on in this session. All right, so let me start by creating 2 random data. So I'm going to do maybe students. Then I want to create a list. Remember, we are starting with a list. So I'm going to create a list of some names. So I'm going to start with John, then maybe Mike, then Mary, then Isaac, right? So let's say we have a list of students. Remember, this is different from your strings. If it was a string, I would have just created a variable that says students equals maybe a quotation, then you pass in the name inside. But this can contain more than one because this is a list because of this bracket, right? So what you have inside that list would all be separated by commas. So it means this is one item, this is another one, this is another one, and this is another one. Yeah, so this is what is called a list. So sort of like what we had in strings, there is also indexing here also. So what that means is, there is this John is on index position 0, Mike is on index position 1, Mary is on index position 2, then Isaac is on index position 3, right? But all in all, we have 4 items sitting on 0, 1, 2, 3 index position. So this is a typical example of a list. So I could go ahead and create maybe another data for tuples. Someone has unmuted. You have a question for me or what? Please, let's mute ourselves unless we have a question. Thank you very much. All right, so maybe I want to create another data for say maybe cars, for instance, right? Then I want to create it as a tuple. I will need to use this circular bracket, right? Then the same data as you pass in there, all separated by, this person is stubborn. please mute yourself. Oh. Right, so cars, let me start with BMW, then comma, maybe Benz, then comma, Toyota, then comma, Volvo, Volvo. Let me just do Volvo, right? So this is a tuple of cars. This is a list of students. That is the difference, right? Now, you might want to ask, so why will I choose to have my data inside a tuple and not inside a list? We are going to see that shortly. The reason is because, remember, anytime you want to check what you can do on a particular data, just go ahead and print the dir of that data, right? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be running some sort of like a comparison between these two. So dir of students and also dir of cars, right? So now once I run this, let me expand this a bit. So let's start with the first one. So from here is for the list, then the one below it is for the tuple, right? So let's start with the list. It means for list, I can append to it. All these ones are methods, remember? So it means I can append, which is to add to that list. I can clear that list. I can copy that list. I can count, extend, index, insert. So I can do all these stuffs on a list. But then let's check for tuple. I can only count and also get the index. So what it means is I can't directly change the contents of a tuple. Why? Because if I can, I would have been seeing something like append, extend inside that tuple, right? Which further buttresses why we said lists are mutable, right? It means it can be changed. Tuples are immutable, they cannot be changed, which is why we only have count and index here. So for the next, are we still together, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So for the next few minutes, we are going to be seeing how to add to a list, how to extract, remove, and stuff like that. So what we are going to do right now is, I think, let's see how to even convert, right? Because for a data to be a list doesn't mean this is what it is ever going to be. You can actually convert a data that was a list to a tuple. So how do you do that? So let me comment this. Say maybe I want to convert this tuple, since I can't add to it because it is a tuple. Say maybe I want to convert it to a list. What I need to do is just to wrap that particular data around a tuple, a list function. So if I want to convert that tuple to a list, I just need to wrap it around the list, then I'll pass that tuple inside, right? So I can maybe call this converted tuple equals to this. So I can go below this and print the converted tuple, right? See what I'm trying to do here? This initial data was a tuple. I want to convert it to a list, which is why I'm wrapping it around a list function, then I'm storing it inside a variable, then I'm printing that variable below here, right? So let's do, I don't just want to, okay, so let's just print this and see. So you can see initially it was a tuple because of this bracket. Now you can see the bracket has been converted to a square bracket. So it means I have successfully converted this particular data that was a tuple to a list. So this is how you can run your conversion, and you can even convert it back again to a list. It's just to wrap it around a list function again, right? So whichever way you want to do it, you can always run your conversion like you can see. Now I have converted it back to a list. So this is how you can convert an initial data in between types in Python. All right, so now moving on, say maybe you want to get Mike, you want to print Mike to the terminal, you want to get Mary, you want to get Volvo. How do you get data from a list, from a tuple, right? Just as I mentioned here, indexing works for the both of them, right? So how it works is, say maybe I want to get let me do that below here. So maybe I want to get Mary to the terminal. Just type out the variable that is responsible for that data you want to extract. Then remember, indexing is square bracket. Then what goes in here is the position of the item you want to get. For instance, I want to get Mike. Mike is on index position 1, so I pass in 1. So then if I print this particular one, so once I print this, definitely it should return Mike to the terminal, which is why we have Mike in here. Let me clear the terminal. Then see, we have Mike. So this is how indexing can be applied or can be used in lists. So let's try and do the same thing for a tuple. Let's try and see how to use indexing for a tuple. So I'm going to do the same thing. Cars, square brackets, maybe 2. So 2 should be 0, 1, 2. So let me go ahead and print. Let me go ahead and print this. Then run it. Now you can see it returned what? Toyota, which is the second 0, 1, 2, which is why it returned Toyota. So what this means is indexing works for both tuples and lists. So whichever one you want, you can just pass the square bracket in front of it, and also the what's it called, the index position. And also all those things we did under strings, because if I print this cars square bracket 2, it returned Toyota, which is a string. So all those things we did under strings, where you can convert this to uppercase, you can convert this to lowercase and stuff like that, it means you can actually do it here. So say maybe instead of printing this, I want to extract it separately. Are we still together, please? So maybe I want to do something like second position. Are we still together, or we are not responding?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So maybe I'm storing this inside a variable first and foremost before I print it, right? But then I don't just want to get the second item. I want to convert the Toyota here to uppercase. So remember because this is a string, so I can say dot what? Upper. I can do it here. Or if it is becoming complicated, I can just leave this as it is. And since we know that second position here is going to return Toyota, and which is a string, Toyota here is a string, so I can say dot what? Upper. We still remember our string methods, right? So it means it will get Toyota here and convert the Toyota to uppercase, right? Because I'm now treating it in isolation. You can see, which is why we have Toyota here in capital letters, right? So remember, first you have a collection, then you extract it with indexing, then you can do whatever it is you want with it. You can even do is upper. That's if you want to check if it is uppercase or lowercase, right? Because all these individually are just strings. Then some persons might ask, is it a must you pass in strings inside a list or a tuple? No, you can actually pass in some different data types. For instance, you can pass in some digits, you can pass in Boolean or floats. So maybe I want to pass in this, right? This is allowed, and also it is allowed in tuples also. Yeah, your list, your tuples can accept different data types. Yeah, so that is that for indexing with list and tuples, right? The same way indexing works for list and tuples, slicing also works for list and tuples. What I mean is, remember, whenever you want to slice, you pick that same variable, right? So students, the same square bracket, instead of passing in 1, you are passing 2 digits, where you are starting from and where you want to slice to. So for instance, if I do 1:3, it means I want to start slicing from the first position to the last position. So then if I print this, then I end the bracket here. You can see it gave me Mike and Mary. Why? Because Mike is on index position 1, so it started slicing from 1, then it stopped at just before it gets to position 3. That's why I returned Mike and Mary. So slicing also works for list. So let's see if it actually works for tuple also. So what I'm going to do is, let me comment this, then I'm going to do the same thing. Cars square bracket. I want to slice from the first position also to the fourth position. Then I'm going to print this, right? Then I'm going to run it. You can see Benz, Toyota, Volvo. So Benz was on index position 1. So it started from Benz, then it stopped just before it gets to this position 4. Remember, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will always stop just before it gets to the upper limit of what you passed, which is why it stopped at Volvo. So what this means is indexing and slicing works for both lists and tuples, right? Then moving on, let's quickly see, let me comment this, then we are going to move to functions for lists and tuples. Remember, we said the difference between functions and methods is functions are just like a name, then a bracket, right? Then methods usually have a dot, name, then a bracket, right? So that's basically the difference between a function and a method. So this first one is like the dynamic of a function, then this second one is a dynamic of a method, right? So please, let's note the differences between functions and methods, right? So now we are moving to let me check, I'm still recording, right? So let's move to functions for lists and tuples. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be there are so many of them, right? So because of we can't just keep stuffing informations in our heads without applications of those information. So I'm just going to pick some very common ones, then we are going to see what they do, right? Then once the project starts, we'll get to see some more functions for lists and tuples, right? So we are going to be treating max, min, sum, enumerate, map, filter, then zip. So these are the functions we are going to be seeing for lists and tuples, right? So to start with, let's just create a general data of say maybe scores, for instance, right? Which is say maybe a list. You can use a tuple if you want. Say maybe scores that is equals to a list of some random scores, 30, 95, 45, then maybe 67. So let's say maybe you have like 50 scores of some persons, and you want to find out the maximum of that list, right? Which one is the highest? Python says you can just use the max function. So how it works is you pass the data you want to work with inside of it, right? So if I go ahead and print this, it is going to return the maximum of that data for me. So if I run it, it returns what? 95. Why? Because 95 is the highest of this data, right? So the same way max works for the maximum, you can do for minimum also. So minimum is just like mean, right? So if I do mean of scores, this is going to return the minimum of this particular data, which is why this returned 30, right? So the same way we can do for sum. So say maybe you want to add all the what's it called? You want to add together all the data inside a particular data set, right? So you can just wrap everything around a sum function, right? It's going to go ahead and calculate it for you, which is why it returned 237, right? So these are some of the I don't want to call them casual, but they are just straightforward these functions that we have. Now moving on to which one is next? Enumerate. So enumerate works like say maybe you have a data, but the data are so much that you don't know which data has a particular index position. So you want Python to return the index positions of each of the data you have, right? That is where enumerate comes into the equation. So how does it work? So I'm going to comment all this. Are we still together, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So say maybe we have a list of, I don't want people to know that I'm chefing. So I'm going to do John, then I'm going to do gold, then I'm just looking for names that are not long. Then Mike. So let's say these are the data we have. Then we want to enumerate, we want to merge, or we want to pair these data with their index positions. So how it works is Python says you create your function, which is enumerate. What do you want to enumerate? I want to enumerate this data. So you pass that in here. So because you might want to use that data later on, I could just call it maybe enumerated data. You can call it whatever it is you want. So I want to go ahead and print the enumerated data, right? So this is data. So now watch what happens once I run this. It returns sort of like an abstract status. It says enumerate object at this. What this means is it's just like a status report of what you asked it to do. So this is basically telling you, okay, I have gone ahead and I've done this thing. Why? Because you didn't ask it to give you back what you asked it to do, right? So how do you do that? It has done something, it has merged something, it has created another data for you. So what you can actually now do is, okay, this data that you've created here, I want you to give it to me as a list. So I'm going to wrap it around a list. It is just an option. You can say, okay, I want you to give me this data as a tuple, right? The choice is yours, right? So if I run it as it is, you can see it has now paired these individual data with their index position. John is on index position 0, gold is on 1, precious is on 2, Mike is on 3. And this bigger bracket here is for tuple. Why? Because you asked it to convert it to a tuple. Yeah, so that's basically what enumerate is. It just pairs your data with the index position, right? So maybe I want to do so much more on that data. It means I'm not going to be converting this to a tuple. I'll just convert this to a list, so I can be able to do so much more on it, right? You can see square bracket. Why? Because this is a list. So say maybe I want to get precious. I just want to print precious in the terminal. It means I have to find a way to enter this data. So how do I do that? Since this is a list, indexing works for list, so I can start doing that. So to enter precious, this is 0, 1, 2. So it means I need to pass in 2 here, right? So now let me run it and see. Now you can see it has already entered this particular block, right? So it is returning this as index position 2 and precious. So this is the particular item resting on the second index position. So say maybe remember we want to get precious and not this pair. So the issue there now is remember our pairwise swap where we said if A, B equals 10, 8. Basically what it means is A is equals to 10, then B is equals to 8. This is what it means. So if we agree that this is true, it means we can also unpack this sequence here. What I mean is we can say I'm thinking of how best to do that. Okay, so let me copy this out. So this is the data that is returning 2 and precious. So now I want to call this a pair. So I'll call this a pair equals to this. So now let me print out this pair. So we can see that it is still the same data that would be returned here, right? So let me print out this pair. You can see that it is still returning the same thing. So the only thing I just did was I just stored the result from this inside this variable here. So what I can do is I can say I want to now extract this pair. So I can say maybe first, second equals pair, which is similar to what I did here. Remember, pair is storing 2 items, right? So if I do something like this, I'm saying help me extract the 2 into this variable, then extract precious into the second variable. So if it is the digit I want to use, I just need to pass the digit in here. If it is the name I want to return, I just need to pass it inside this place. Right? Then I run it, you can see return 2 for this line, then precious for this line. So basically, whenever you have like a tuple returned, you can actually unpack that sequence into 2 variables, So whichever variable you unpack it to depends on you. Are we still together, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So this is how to actually unpack a sequence from your tuple. But remember, it all started from this enumerate function. Enumerate is just, it will take, all your data that you have, then it will merge them with their respective index position. All right, so now let's move to the other one, which is map, right? So I'm going to use the same data. So what map does is, it takes whatever data you pass inside it, then it converts it to what you pass it as a second parameter. This is what I mean. So if I type map, remember it is still a function, right? So for me to even know what it does, I will hover inside it. Sometimes it doesn't come up. Just do it a few times. So now it comes up, right? So it says the map is expecting a function and also an iterable. Iterable in programming just means a sequence. It means your collection type. So it is expecting maybe a list or a tuple as a second parameter. So it says you have to pass in a function first, then a list or a tuple secondly, right? So now let me do that. A function first. So say maybe I want to convert all this to, maybe I want Python to just return the length of each of these items to me. So the length of each is often called len, right? So you just pass that function without the bracket. Then comma. The second item you're passing inside is the data you want to work with. Remember, it is expecting what's it called? A sequence, an iterable, right? So I'm going to pass in this as the iterable here. So what I'm trying to say is, Python, help me pass this data individually through len function, then return the result for me, right? Then I'm going to just store this, maybe counts. Let me just call this counts. Then, because if I run this now as it is, let me just print this count. If I run this as it is, we are still going to be getting that object at this. Why? Because, okay, you ask it to do this, but you didn't tell it, okay, this collection type, do you want it as a list or as a tuple? So what I want to do is, I want everything as a list. So I'm going to wrap everything here around a list. Then I'm going to run it. You can see, it took this entire data, right, which is John, Gold, Precious, and Mike. So the first one, it mapped it through length. How many characters are here? 1, 2, 3, 4. It returned 4. How many characters are here? 1, 2, 3, 4. It returned 4. Precious has 8, which is why it returned 8. Mike has 3, which is why it returned 3. Right? So your map usually just converts, runs this particular data through this, then returns the result. For instance, again, say maybe I have, let me comment this for now. Say maybe I have maybe age or ages, which is equals to a list of, or let me don't, because we don't have dot something in ages, let me do balance, say maybe some sort of wallet balance. So I want to do 30, 78, 60, right? If you want to convert all these to decimals, you don't have to go directly inside here to convert it. What you need to do is to run it through the map function. Remember, 2 parameters. The first one, the function. So what is the function for converting to decimal? Floats, right? Then comma, which data are you working with? This particular data here, balance. So I'm going to copy this and paste it as the second parameter. So I want to store everything inside here. So I want to say maybe conversion decimal equals to this. So because this will return object at whatnot again, right? So I want to run everything through a list. So I'm passing everything inside a list. Then I want to print the conversion decimal. So then if I run this, you can see it took everything here, then it converted them to decimal, right? So that is just one of the easiest application of the map function with your tuple and your list. All right, another one is filter, right? So filter sometimes can be a bit dicey, but trust me, it is not hard, right? So what I'm going to do is, let me just copy this data, then I'll paste it below here, right? So we want to use the filter method, right? So I'll type filter, then we can see what it is expecting. Now I'll hover in here. Yeah, so it is also expecting the function as the first parameter, then it is expecting iterable as the second parameter. So now here's the thing. Let's say we have some data like this, maybe true, comma, maybe some digits, right? So you want users to type in some names or to type in their name, but some person is typed in something like this, some other person is typed in some digits. How do you filter out the ones that are not the data you want? That is where filter becomes very, very important. So how it works is, what you want to do, remember there is a particular method in strings called dot is alpha, which is to check if something is alphabet, right? So what this is expecting is all these ones, you are expecting strings, right? So you have to do str dot is alpha. So basically this is the function that you want to check, right? Then the comma, which data are you working with? This names data here. So what I'm trying to do is, Python should take this names data, right? Because they are strings I'm expecting, check if they are all alphabet rather. So whichever one that are not alphabet, let me filter them out. That is what this particular one is doing. So I can now say filtered data equals to this. So I can go ahead and print filtered data, right? Remember, we only want the ones that are alphabet, filter the ones that are not alphabet out, then we run it. Right, you can see it is still returning the same object at y because we didn't tell it where to compile the entire thing. So we want this entire result as a list. Remember, you can use tuple also, it's a choice, right? So I'll run it again. It says dot is alpha for string object does not apply to a bool. The reason is because of this particular one here. This is not a string, and I'm saying string dot is alpha. So it did for this, for this, for this, for this, but on getting to this particular one, it saw that true is not a string. So it was because of the data I created. So that was why we got that error. So I'm going to clear the terminal and run it again. Right? So this time around, you can see John passed the test because John is all alphabet. Gold passed the test because gold is all alphabet. Precious passed the test because Precious is all alphabet. Mike also passed it, but this did not pass it, right? Because you asked them to type in their name, but they went ahead and typed some form of digits, right? So you filter those ones out. So this is one of the applications of the filter function in Python. Are we still together, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, so the last one is the zip function, right? So let me bring down this same data here. Yeah, so just like we have in our regular zip in our clothes, zip is just to add or join what you have on the left hand side with what you have on the right hand side. So basically it works like a button. You are joining or combining what you have on the left hand side with what you have on the right hand side. So maybe we have the names of our students. Let me remove this. Then we want to merge their location. So maybe we have their location, maybe inside this tuple somewhere. Then the location of John is Jabi. The location of Gold is, let me guess where Gold lives. Let's say Gold lives in Borno. All right, then Precious lives in maybe Suleja. Then Mike lives in Lagos, right? So basically, I want to merge John to Jabi, Gold to Borno, Precious to Suleja, then Mike to Lagos, right? So let's say that is what I want to do. Python says you can use a function called zip, right? So whichever one you want on the left hand side, you pass in first. So if it is location first, name second, that is what you want, then you pass in location first. But what I want is I want the names to show first. So I'll pass in names as the first parameter. Then I want to merge it with what? Or I want to zip it with their location. So I'll pass that as the second parameter, right? So because I want to use this data later on, let me store this inside a variable. Then I want to go ahead and print that variable after. So as usual, we are going to get the object at whatnot, right? So what I want to do instead is, I want the entire thing as, say, maybe a list, right? So I can go ahead and wrap everything around a list. So once I run it now as it is, you can see it has merged John to Jabi, Gold to Boronu, Precious to Suleja, then Mike to Lagos. Yeah, so that's basically what your zip function does, right? It merges two data together, and it is not a must you pass it inside a list. You can actually pass this as a what? Tuple. Then you see, so once we get to dictionary also, you can even wrap this around a dictionary for you to convert it to a dictionary. But the reason why I'm not doing that right now is because we've not treated dictionary yet. In a few minutes, we are going to do that. Yeah, so those are just the popular list and tuple functions we have. Okay, so moving on, let's quickly treat methods. Remember, we have a data as it is. To see what we can do on that data, we can actually do something like dir of names, right? Then we can go ahead and print everything, right? Now see, these are all the methods we can apply on a list, right? So we are going to be picking some very popular ones and see what we are going to be seeing what they do, right? Starting from the append method. Remember, method usually have dot something, right? So starting with this first one, append is you're adding something to a list, right? So now if I carry that same variable names dot append, maybe we have some new students here. Maybe I want to add Mary. Say maybe Mary is our new student, right? So I'm saying Python, go inside the names variable, append whatever it is I pass inside here. So it means it would have added something to this list. So I could go ahead and print the names now to see if it has been added or not. So if I run it, you can see the new list is now been extended by what? Mary, right? So it took Mary here and it added it to, at the back of this former or the last item here. So that is basically what append does. It is straightforward, right? Add one item to a list. Then clear is just like it's straightforward. I think we did clear in strings. So if I do names dot clear, right, then I go ahead and print. If I print names, you're basically just wiping everything away from that list. You can see it returned an empty list. That is what .clear does. .copy means is you are just making a copy of this particular data. I think we have like 15 minutes more. So here's what you're going to do for me, right? Once it is like 5 minutes more, please just let me know. You are going to see it on your terminal. So once you see 5 minutes more, please just let me know so I can round up and create another session, then we can continue from there. All right, but then we still have like say maybe 15 minutes more. All right, so dot copy is just to make a copy of something, right? Dot count. So let's see for dot count. So if I do names dot count, now sometimes you would forget what a particular method is expecting. So what you do is just maybe click. If it is not showing, you hover on it again. If it is not showing, just keep doing stuff like this. It will eventually show. Sometimes it just lags. So you see now it doesn't want to show again now. Alright, so it's showing now. So it is expecting some sort of like a value which has to be a string. So what it means is you want to count, maybe I have Mike, then I have another John here, right? Maybe you have 5,000 followers. You want to know how many Marys are following you, right? So you can use dot count. So in this case now I can now pass in a string, maybe John. So I'm saying Python, help me go inside this data, count how many times John appears in that data. So I can just say maybe count equals to this, then I can go below this and print count. So it's going to count how many John we have here. So if I run it, you can see it tells me 2. Why? Because there is a John here, then there's another one here. So that is what the dot count does. Then extend. Extend is a form of appending, but appending only takes one parameter. Extend takes more than one. So maybe we have some set of new students. So maybe we have new students. Let me comment this. So maybe we have some set of new students inside a list of David, then Toby, right? So let's say these are new students. You can't use dot append this to this, right? Because this is more than one. But what you can do instead is you can say names dot what? Extend. So you are extending the names by what? By these new students. So you are passing this inside it. So it means it will take this particular new record and extend the former one by it. So basically, if we print the former record now, it should have added this. So if I go below this and print names, it should return the updated value. You can see it took David and Toby and it updated the former one by David and Toby. So that's basically what your extend does. It takes more than one parameter and adds to a list. Your append only adds one parameter. That's the difference. Then index. Index is I think I've forgotten, but then let's see it together, right? So the same names, right? Then dot index. So since I've forgotten, I'll just type the bracket and I'll hover inside it. So it is expecting, let me see. Doesn't want to come up again. Sometimes it just refuses to come up, but then just keep, so now it came up. Right, so the index is expecting a value, so it means it's expecting a string, then it is expecting a start and stop. Really? I think these two are not important. Why? Because we should be able to pass in a particular value. It should return what index position that particular thing is. So I don't think these two are a must. So let's see that. So if I pass in gold, for instance, right? So I want to believe this should be able to return what index position gold is on that data, right? You can see it returned 1 because John is on 0, gold is on 1. So let me pass Mike instead. Right, then I'm going to run it. You can see it returned 3. Why? Because this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So that is basically how index method works in lists, right? Then insert is just adding a particular item to a particular position. Remember, append would add to the back, extend would add to the back, but insert should be able to add to maybe this position or this position. So now let's see that. So let me comment this. So the same thing, I'm going to do names dot insert. So what do I want to insert? let's see how it works. I'll hover on it. So it is expecting first and foremost the index position where you want to insert something. So maybe I want to insert after position 1, so I'll do 1 comma. So what do you want to insert at the first position? Maybe I want to insert Isaac. I want Python to take Isaac, then add it to an index position 1. So I could go below this and print names. Let me see if it has added Isaac where I wanted it to. So once I run it, you can see it took Isaac, then it added it on index position 1. So that is basically how your .insert method works, right? Then another one we can see is let me see, pop, right? So pop basically just removes an item, right? So I'll comment this. Then I'm going to do names.pop. So let me see if this is as expecting a parameter. It says index, so it means you can pass in an index position of what you want to pop. But then let's not pass anything. Let's just pop first and foremost. So let me do, let me call this popped equals to this. Then I want to print popped. Are we still together, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So I want to pop, then store what I'm popping inside a variable, then I'm printing that variable, right? So once I run it, you can see it popped John. Let me run it again. It still went ahead and popped John. It means for every time you run your .pop, it always pops the last one. It always removes the last one. That is what the .pop does, right? So it means if I were to maybe print the names now below this, let me print names. So we want to see the updated value of the names now after we've popped it, right? So first and foremost, he popped John. Remember, this is the last John he popped. So we are still left with the first John. So we now have John, Gold, Precious, and Mike. It has removed the last one. So that is what the .pop does, right? But when we hover on this, it says we can actually pass in a parameter. So let's try and pass, maybe we want to pop Precious, right? So I'll just pass in, Precious is on index position 0, 1, 2. So I'll pass in 2, right? So now let me run it and see. You can see it removed Precious, then the entire list has now been updated without Precious, right? So that is how .pop works. Then remove, which is the next one. Let me see. Even though, right, most of all these methods, I don't really have them offhand. I usually remember when I hover inside them, right? So if I do names.remove, so this particular one says it is expecting a value which has to be a string, right? So it means I can pass in John, but this might conflict because we have 2 John. So let's just use it and see. Then let's print the updated list now after we've removed John. So I'm going to print the names. Remember, we have 2 Johns, right? So now it means he removed the first one. So he left us Gold, Precious, Mike, and John. Let me run it again. So it keeps removing the first instance of that name it can see. Yeah, so that is the .remove method. You pass in the item you want to remove directly, right? Most of all these stuffs are just straightforward, right? Then the reverse, I'm not going to bother about that one. It will just take this John, put it here, put Mike here, put Precious here. It's just reversing your data. Then sort is doing similar stuff also. So these are, the popular or the common list methods we have. Now let's move to tuple method. Remember, there are only 2 methods in there we saw, index and count. So what it means is if we have a tuple data, say maybe names that is a tuple, maybe John, Mike, and Alice. right? This is a tuple, so if I print names, it will return names as a tuple, right? So I want to do dir of this entire data. You can see it says I can only count and get the index. Please, how many minutes do we have left, please? I think you should be seeing the
5.
5.
5.
Okay. I think once it is 4, I'm going to round up and create another session. All right. So we can see here, it says we can only count and get the index. So what it means is we can only
It's 4.
do 4. All right. Thank you. So it means I can only do like maybe
It's 4
names.
minutes.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I'll round up shortly. So it means I can only do names dot maybe count. Sort of like what we did initially, where you can count how many times John appears in here. Then we want to print everything here. Right, so I'm counting how many times John appears in this data, then I'm printing everything, which is why it tells me 1. Then I can also do index. The index we did initially for list, it works the same way. So it means you can't change a tuple, right? Which is why we said tuples are immutable. They cannot be changed. So what it means now is, since this is a tuple that cannot be changed, and you want to do something on that tuple, what you can actually do is you can say converted tuple equals to this names that was a tuple. I want to convert it to a list first. So I'll take it to a list first. So if I print converted tuple now, it means it will give me this particular data as a what? As a list. So if I check dir on that particular data now, you'll notice that it will return all those append, clear, copy, and all. So it means I can add whatever it is I want to add to this data. And once I'm done, I just need to convert it to what? A tuple again. So what it means is, to convert it back to a tuple, I can say maybe converted back equals maybe a tuple converted tuple, right? Confusing, yeah, but it's just because of the variables name that I was using, right? Just know that you can always convert to, different collection types, right? So that is that for lists and tuples, right? So in the next session that I'm going to be creating, in the next few minutes, we are going to cover for dictionaries and sets, right? So please, I'm seeing like how many persons online. The moment I paste the link in the Telegram group, please let's quickly join. Remember, today is a Saturday. For so many of us, we have some other activities to attend to. So please quickly join so we can continue from there, right? So what you do for me is just wait for me patiently in the Telegram group. It won't take me more than a minute or even maybe 40 seconds or thereabout. I'm going to create a new link. I'll paste it in the group. So it is that new link that you click, then we continue from there. All right, so see you guys in the next session. So check the Telegram group for the link.